It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon with our talented artist, Quisqueya. Um, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Meyken Barreto. I'm a guest curator at Residency Unlimited. I've been working with some Cuban artists coming to Residency Unlimited in the last few months. And thanks to the magic of Zoom, I'm available to talk today to Quisqueya because I'm actually in Miami now as part of a curatorial residency for the platform South-South. But I'm very happy to be able to talk with Quisqueya about her work, about her recent practice. As you may know, Quisqueya is an important artist that has a long trajectory. She deals with aesthetic politics, with notions of art history and traditions of the Caribbean space, and the mixture of all of that with identity, society, the dynamics of the everyday life in Dominican Republic where she lives. And Quisqueya has spent a couple of months here as a residency at RU. And recently, Quisqueya, you have had this open studio in the last few days. Welcome to the talk. I'm so glad you're here to talk with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
So as part of your time, the time that you have spent in New York, you have been working on the RIP painting series, and you show some of the results of that work in the open studio that I just mentioned a few days ago. So I would like to start our conversation talking specifically about that series, and tell us a little bit about it, about the process, about the concept behind this series.
Thank you for the invitation to have this conversation, Meyken, and Residency Unlimited. Natalie, Lulu, Maya, and everyone involved in this residency and in the process of completed the work during my stay in New York. Also the Rockefeller Brothers Fund and the Cuban Artists Fund that is also part responsible and sponsors of my stay in New York and the production of my work. Well, I will talk a little bit about myself. I was born in Cuba from a Cuban mother and a Dominican father. So my life as a very early life as a child was moving between Dominican Republic and Cuba. But at the age of probably 19, I went back to Cuba. I studied at the Instituto Superior de Arte in Havana. And then I moved to Mexico. Then I lived in the States, especially in Miami. And then I went back to live in Dominican Republic. And that trajectory, that all these trips between those places, very, very symbolic, the fact that they are connected all with the Caribbean Sea, and they're also part of the bigger concept of the bigger Caribbean, not only the island Caribbean, but the continental Caribbean. And so for me, I never left the region in some way. But to return to Dominican Republic and to live there and to redirect my look to the South was very important in my practice. So I went back to Dominican Republic and I was developing this series. I developed the series about mockering a little bit the fact that I was living again in places where you have to struggle a lot with your practice and the fact that you're an artist, and how do you become an artist? What kind of subject you start working again since you you're living cultural center. Not even Miami wasn't a cultural center during late 90s, but compared with other places in the Caribbean, they have a lot of more institutions, art institutions, and a lot of other institutions that really work. So what what happened in the late 90s when I went back to Dominican Republic, that I focused in photography. And photography is a medium that helps you a lot to change, not only if you're changing the places you live, or you're starting to do new work. So photography is a medium that will help you to keep going as an artist, even if something strong is happening in your life that you cannot work. Even if you don't have a studio, you can keep going, working and developing ideas. So when I went back, photography was very helpful in that process of getting getting used to a new city, a new way of seeing the world, and the practice of being an artist. So this series that you're asking me, though also, of course, they're really very, very connected with art history, something that is very present in my work, not only this series, but in most of them. And but what happened is that that fact that going back to Dominican Republic bring me this way of looking to our history in a different way. So I start looking to artists that influence my practice. I will share the screen from now. So you probably everybody's familiar with Lucio Fontana's work and the spatialism movement, but also the fact he was coming from also from Argentina, from the south, but also Willie de Castro, which is a Brazilian artist that I rediscover while already living in the Dominican Republic and looking to the south with another way of with another sensibility. And so he has a phrase that is his work was a physical event on painting. On the contrary, it was a very like a spatial event on this painting. I'm sorry. It was more like I will go to my kind of guidance here. For him was a painting event on a space, and I also love to rephrase it for my work as a spatial event on painting. So these are photographs of the very beginning of my returning to Dominican Republic. And also, if you see the materiality start being in the photographs, like the blue jeans and the idea of the reverence to the also to the public space, and not also the materiality in the image, but also the me as an artist walking in the street of Santo Domingo, looking at all these situations that I found. This is also an image of where a lot of materiality is involved with the fabrics, and not also it's about contamination, or it's also about the materials involved in the image. What happened with photography is that this physicality of the materials are still a two-dimensional experience. So after some time, I wanted to move to more to research about materials, and I started visiting garment stores and upholstery stores, and in this neighborhood that is dedicated to to sell all these materials. So this piece that you're looking at the screen is a spot that I have in my studio where I place all the research that I have done for several years with different materials. And if you see the very first on the right, on the left, I'm sorry, is one of the first fabrics or garment that I start doing the sanding on the fabric. And so during that process of going to these public markets and photographing people and photographing open markets and tents and the activity, not only the human activity, but the cultural activity around a market, and all the materiality that I was researching in those photography. I really wanted to go from photography to installation, from photography to the real material that I was looking in those places. So I met in the way of this, after a lot of conversations and a lot of studio time, I met Jose, which is an upholster, and this is the first work I did with him. Is a grid, also made of this very distinctive material of the markets and the informal economy. And the informal economy is also at the 70% of the economy of the Dominican Republic. So all the aesthetics and all the materials involved in this activity is also very, I feel very attractive. But the grid is made 1 square by 1, and then all put together. So it reminds an architectural and a rational shape made of this material that is very ephemeral, and also it doesn't remain that blue as you see it in the picture. And next to the image that you're looking right now, there's a photograph of a tent in real place, in construction sites or markets. This is also a piece that where I collect all of the materials that I have keep with the years in my practice, not only fabrics or garments or but also the plastic, the recycled plastic that I use for the work, the formal informal series that you will see later today. And so that brings me to the first image of the is an image of the first stage of the repeat painting. So this is the rooftop of my studio, where I have to clean after the fabric is sanded. I have to clean it. I have to be sure that it's going to work once I have to stretch the canvas that is all totally ripped and broken, the warp from the weft. So this is another detail. And at the very beginning, the series was very controlled. The sanded area was centered and around a geometric shape. And with the time, I have energized a little bit the sanding of the surface, of the pictorial surface. And this is one of the work that I completed during the residency here in New York. But if you see from the very first work from the series to a late one, there is a lot of energizing the way I sanded the canvas, and this is also another work completed during the residency. But it's also important why, in terms of who helped me to sand, and where is this coming also, not only from art history point of view, but in a more in a way of that connect the work with more with popular culture or mass consumption or pattern of consumption. So this person that helped me to sand the canvases, he has a small business of ripping jeans, and the denim is a symbol of mass obsession with this fashion and this trend that crosses social classes from everywhere. So for me, every time Lorenzo is the name of this person who helped me to rip and to sand the fabric. Every time he comes to the studio, he brings information to my senses, to my ideas. He brings every time he brings a different jeans. He already ripped it with shapes, with letters, with a heart. So he's always creating as an artist, like me. So for me, it's very important the relation with Jose, with Lorenzo, with Pico. They always bring in, and we are interchanging knowledges and skills and ideas all the time that are really important to my practice. So this is our details of the repeat, one of the last repeat paintings where I energize or dynamize the surface, the pictorial surface in different ways. I don't know if this answers your question, Meyken, but I think if you want to ask me something specifically from the series that I haven't mentioned.
No, I think I love your answer because you start from the very beginning, covering the whole spectrum of how you get to this idea of the repaintings, your connections with the texture and the importance of materiality in your work, the connection with the art history, icons of the art history. And what I really love is how you connect those icons with the tradition and with the local dynamics of the informal economy, which I see it's an interesting topic for you, and you explore that in different moments in your practice, and all how this is all mixed for this result that we see here, that I see it's actually the works that you produce here as part of your residency. And I think that my second question is actually about all this multi-layered nature of your practice, because sometimes we see a sort of an abstract result, but there are a lot of layers of content behind it, dealing with all these social and politics and economy dynamics. And it also makes me think about these other series that you have, like the Spikes series, paintings, and or some other works. So I would like you to talk about other series that are also dealing with this, like having conceptual multi-layered nature.
Well, I consider myself a conceptual artist. I was educated as a conceptual artist, so ideas are always driving my work and my practice. And these and the Spikes and the repeat paintings and the Spike series, and they're all coming from the streets, because my practice was when I returned, as I said, my practice was more about photography and documenting all these creativity in the streets to get in order to live and in order to survive in a society that I think is not and it's very complex, no, because it's a very complex democracy, and there's a lot of freedom in their daily lives, how people behave, where they go, or what they do to survive, and in terms of the resources, economical resources. So these ideas are coming from the street and from my practice from photography. But these images, this image that you're seeing is also a piece that is part of the Unlimited residency, and it's a piece where I separate thread by thread the warp from the weft, and in a very performatic sense of the work. People also that visited me in the studio also is participating in the separation, because I need help to separate this, but also brings me to art history and the role of the grid in especially in artists from early 20th century and in Latin America, like concrete and neo-concrete, artists like Gego, who explore the grid and complex the grid in a very a brilliant way. And so there's also in me the need to refer with my work to art history, but how can I the multiple, how can I approach the multiple life of painting, which some people call expanded, but I prefer to call the multiple life of painting. So this is about painting, but it's becoming a sculpture, and it's also very common in my work that I am talking of one medium, but I'm actually working from another medium, and that brings me. This is a detail of the warp and weft. But this piece was also I have a version in 1996, and it was the time that I was traveling a lot between Mexico, Miami, and Dominican Republic, and I didn't know where to remain, where to stay and work and live, and so it was the title is the idea of fragmentation, warp and weft. So it was not only to separate the warp from the weft, but it's also a reflection of my life during those periods of time. So that talking about the idea of sculpture from painting and crossing borders between mediums, the Spike series that is also a conversation about pattern of consumption, but it's also a conversation about how can I add three-dimensional objects to the pictorial surface, but also with wish objects. And that brings me to talk a little bit about the Spike, that it was created in a resistance culture, in an underculture, as a way of during the 70s and late 60s to counter culture, to talk about and be very critic with the conservative and the established. So this very same object is assimilated by the blue chip of brands, designers, to pieces that are really expensive and really attracted to mass consumption and patterns of consumption. And then another way of approach is that in countries like Dominican Republic, people we copy a lot, and we have also a very interesting recent issue, an event that the government started a campaign of the brand of the country, and they had copyright infringement with the logo. So they have to rebrand and redo the whole thing because somebody said it was a copy of something was made in Russia. A logo was designed in Russia. So the neighborhood where I go to buy all these materials is called the Copy Republic. So it's a neighborhood where people copy everything, a pair of jeans and the ripped jeans, the last trend of ripped jeans, the last trend with the spikes. So it's the neighborhood that nourished me with my work. So in the Spike series, there's also a conversation about the language of art, the history of art, the different approaches of how to cross border between mediums, but also there is a conversation between how these objects I found it in Santo Domingo, where they were made, and they were made in China. That's also something very interesting, that when I started looking to these stores, I realized, all these garments were made in different countries. So we are talking also about globalization of the export and the import of materials. So how these materials also change the identity or influence the identity or the cultural practice in a country. So these are also, I also like to mention the idea that why the spikes are all over the border of the painting. And I always talk about this story that there's in the Dominican Republic, the interior designer is very responsible of artists selling very with very frequent, and they also ask you how to frame your work. And for me, that question of how to frame my work is already very complex, because it's a complex question, because it's already finished for me, the work. So I start putting the spikes on the border of the painting in a way to avoid the idea of framing the work. So how can you frame a spike that is already pushing the frame of the work? So the idea of putting the spikes around is a little bit related to that. This is a detail of the spikes, and also the lines are not drawings, but they're lines, they're sealed in the machine with different, in this case, with threads of different colors. That's also something that I do with Jose at the poster. This is one of the biggest work of the spikes. It has 3,800 spikes all over, and one of the reasons I don't do a lot of this work anymore is because it takes a lot of physical work, and it's very tough. I finish ill after I complete one of them. There's a lot of strength and the dynamic of screwing all the spikes on the wood that is behind the fabric is really tough. This is another one. Also, there is characteristic of this work that is the spikes. You need an angle to see the spikes, the size of the spikes also, and because when you see it when you are in front of, you don't perceive the three-dimensionality of the spikes. Like in this, you see shadows, but you don't see the real size of the spikes or the length. So I'm sorry, I introduced another image that is from the next question.
Yeah. Thank you, Quisqueya. I think this is a very interesting series, and how you're turning a two-dimensional painting into a sculpture, also dealing with all these notions of informal economy, fashion, and all that you have mentioned in your response, and its connection again with the art history and all of that. So yes, my next question has to do with the image that you just showed, and it's about all this work that you developed during the lockdown due to COVID-19. I know you were in the countryside, and you were exploring a different array of topics related to nature and your connection to that. So yeah. Tell us a little bit about it. I think it's an interesting body of works.
Well, during lockdown, the first month I only could work with computer drawings and a lot of online research and contacting people and asking people how they were, and I connect with Maria Inés Rodriguez. She's the director of Tropical Papers, and she invited me to do this residency, online residency during the lockdown. And for me, it was like the perfect energy that I needed to keep going and keep working, even that I was locked down in a very wild place in the north part of Dominican Republic. So the second part of the first part of the residency was the computer drawings of these insects that I used to document and photograph because I have been living or visiting this place for 20 years. So I'm very familiar with the place. But the second part of the residency was these small paintings that I could go to the city and buy some treasures and bring some canvases from my studio. But what happened in that time is that I stopped to see nature around the house that I was being for 20 years, and you stop looking and you have time for get close to a tree and see the rings and start researching about evolutional or design of evolution, which means the designs that the trees get with the time. So time was really present during those months because you know that ring probably takes 1 year in order to get there. So, or probably months. So the paintings start a dialogue with the patterns of the evolutional design, and in dialogue with other plants. Like this is a pandano, which is not a native plant, but is also a plant that is from the tropics, from Asian tropic. This is a mango tree, and some paintings were also in dialogue with the leaves and with the trunk of. This is a flamboyant, and so I start looking with more time and more dedication to the nature surrounded my house. And this is also a jagrumo, which is a tree that is a native tree, and also it has a lot of language in relation with the weather. So the leaf turns to the white side when it's going to rain, and it's going to the green side when it's very sunny. And so the patterns on the painting is a dialogue with the pattern on the branches of the tree, and but also a way how to. I start thinking, how can I have an exhibition in this open space, and how can I arrange? How can I put together all these paintings after I finish them? So I start moving around the first ones to different trees like palms and another pandano. This is also a painting reflecting the way the pandano leaves get dry. Like they're also very gradual, very, very slow. Also references to our history like Elio Tizica, the bottles, and he has this beautiful word that he adds some fabric to a bottle full of colored water. So this palm is called bottle. So I put some garments that I was using to clean my brushes surrounded the palm, and also in different other trees. But at the end, I made like a whole exhibition in this pandano, which is a small pandano that I can afford to the high branches, to get to the high branches because it's not too tall. And also the relation between the fruits and the paintings, and how can I approach the painting as a fruit of creation, and the paintings and the fruits are in the same space. And also the patterns of the fruit and the patterns are in the paintings. This is the roots of the pandano, and it was, and also the shadows of the little leaves on top of the paintings. So it was very interesting for me to the idea of not having walls, not having a space, I had an exhibition that was locked down for 9 months because the lockdown came a week after the opening. And so this project was the idea that I was whatever happened in the world, I still be an artist, whatever I found myself.
Yeah, it's very interesting how you turn your attention to nature in this period and start to find interesting things in the textures, in the patterns. And as I see how you're talking, I see that you learned a lot about trees, about flowers, plants during that period. So it was like a research on all of that environment that you had. And that dialogue that you establish between your practice, that it's usually not located in social spaces, and how you try to connect that and establish these conversations with plants, it's also very interesting.
And the fact that if you listen to curators and how to recreate or reinvent the way the exhibitions in our institutions are, for example, the design of the hanging designs and how they are looking for different ways to approach an exhibition. And the idea of not having the classic white cube to develop a project was also a challenge for me, but also I can do a ton of exhibitions in different trees and different open spaces. Thanks to this experience.
Yeah, it absolutely makes you think literally out of the box.
Out of the box,
of the
exactly.
gallery. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And sometimes we are stuck with that, idea in mind, but these experiences are always, challenging and enriching in that sense.
Yes.
So I'm going to make you another question right now. I just want to say to the audience that if they have questions about what we have been discussing, you can write it on the chat and we can ask Quisqueya those questions at the end of our conversation. So now I would like to touch base about this other part of your work that is related to furniture design, and how you have developed works in that direction, somehow with the same idea of mixing like important icons of the international design with the local traditions, and establishing this kind of interesting and new conversations with new materials and all of that.
I think well, my interest in furniture is before this series. So I have a couple of pieces that are like photograph pieces, and also more other works that are more similar to the Spike series, but using furniture. So it was it's something that I will always through the admiration of design and furniture, and also specifically to the 20th century design more than any other. So the series, the formal informal series that is including the furniture that you were mentioning, started also with my process of being photographing the streets of Santo Domingo. And this particular one, I was photographing the urban buses, the small urban buses that Dominicans, we call voladoras, because they are small, they're always fast, and they don't care. They're always getting in your way, whatever you are. So you have to take out of their way so they don't crash your car. So las voladoras, the flyers, what the translation could be, are full of these, the wheels, the wheels, and also the mirrors and the holders are so covered with this weaving of different colors. So they call to embellish the box. So it's a culture of embellishing, and we call it pimpeo, to pimp the box. In order to pimpear the box, they invite this guy to make this beautiful weaving, plastic weaving on different parts of the boxes. So when I was photographing this voladoras, I said I have to meet this person. I have to stay in the bus station, and until he gets here, no matter when this is gonna happen, I have to meet this person, and I need to start an interchange with this and give him my ideas so we can see what happens. So I met Fico eventually. Federico Polonio is his name, and we started working in 2007. This is the first piece. And I gave him, because when in our interview, I asked him that what was the comfortable song for him to work, and he said, well, I always like tubular shapes. For me, it's easier to go around a tube and weave this structure. So I went to buy these PVC tubes, and we started weaving together. He only used to do 2 crosses, stripes, but I asked him to go further and use more than 2. So we started doing it with 3, with 4, and with different colors. And so I did this piece that is called Heap of Paradise. And it says it's more like a sculpture or an installation. It's a floor piece. But eventually, when he insists that tubular shapes were more easy for him to weave, I started looking into tubular shapes, and I realized that furniture from the very early 20th century, and the tubular was very important in the industrial design for furniture. This one, for example, which is the LC2 from Le Corbusier and Charlotte Perrien and Jeanneret, from the office of Le Corbusier, is anthropometric. They study the anthropometric to dimension everything in relation to the human body, how we see the measure from different parts of the leg. So when I gave him this LC2, actually they're a clone, they're not original, they're a clone, they're a copy of the LC2. He felt like, oh, this is the one, this is where I feel comfortable. So we start working with LC2, and also to defunctionalize a little bit, not a little bit, but totally the furniture, and become more like a sculpture or installation. I also designed some shapes, tubular shapes, in order to interchange with him, and in order to give him like these shapes and this tubular that he was comfortable with. But also the idea of all this vernacular aesthetic of his work, or of his skills and his craftsmanship, and on these very, very icons of the 20th century furniture design. This is the B306, also designed by Charlotte Perrien and the office of Le Corbusier. Also defunctionalized. The Seska, that's also an icon of 20th century furniture design. Also in the butterfly, which I have also made the cover to refunctionalize the chair with leather and painting. This is also a shelf with photography, and with the time I start adding these wings so I can hang different things, especially photography. That is a medium that I never stopped working on. But the idea of printing the photography and I'm combining photography of materiality like temps and inside these leather pockets that is also material. So an image of the materiality in these leather pockets that is also talking about materiality. This is a close-up of how the ribbon looks and the rings and the photographs, and also this is a project I did in 2019 where I tried to in this platform to put most of the work that I have done with FICO, not all of them, but most of them in an exhibition called Infinitamente Maleable, infinitely malleable. So this is the last image of the conversation that I'm sharing. This is a close-up of the LC2 with cushions made of these Chinese bags that all over the markets in the world. And I made some cushions from the bag. I think.
Oh, wow. Great. I love that you, for every question, you start from the very beginning and make the whole story, how and the whole process is and how it actually arrived to your mind, all of those ideas. And I like the fact of you taking these like international, very famous kind of furniture and turning them into this sort of vernacular and enclosed kind of element that people, like local people, can, you know, identify with this as part of their own culture of, as you were saying, embellishing the environment. And I always got surprised by also how you present your work, because it's not, you know, the single piece there in the middle of nowhere. There's always an interesting conversation with different elements. You start adding things in a way that we feel like a little bit more in a sort of environment that just experiencing the piece isolated.
Well, this space actually they also they don't, the space doesn't have walls. It's one glass in one side and one glass in the other. So I had only the center of the space to have the exhibition. So, and I wanted to separate the floor because the floor is very busy. The marble design was very busy and the work is very busy. So I wanted to separate the floor from the work. And so it's always, you have to look the way to not to remain conventional in order to present the work. And I think there's always a concern in my practice about that, how I present my work, and it's very important.
Yeah, I see. I remember also how you present this new series in the open studio recently. You know, the conversation that you established there was interesting. Yeah, and also as I was talking to you before, that idea of collaboration and bringing people from other disciplines or with other kind of knowledge and different backgrounds to also interact and collaborate with you, I think it's very enriching for all these ideas and experiences that you're presenting.
Well, it's very important actually, because I can say I looked for them in the streets while I was doing this photography, I can say, series that is called Public Space. It's a long series of photographs. And I realized that everything I was photographing, I wanted to have it as part of another body of work, even if it was parallel to the photography series. So when you work in the street, when the studio is in the streets and it's not, you're not in a closed environment, and you're walking every day, the experience that you have with materials, colors, forms, and shapes is very rich. There's no way that I couldn't remain as a photographer, looking at all these colors and materials. So I believe, yes, the street is very important to get out of but at some point, they're coming more to the studio than I go to the streets. Like with the time, like I spend more time in the studio, so they bring me the information, they bring me the knowledge and the skills to the studio, and we are always experimenting. Like for the with the show piece, for example, with Fico, we did it 3 times. We did the weaving, and then we unweave, and then go back and forth until we had exactly the way we wanted. With so we are also, and it's a very physical work to weave this. The weaving of this is very physical. You have to stretch the strip and then go around and hold it. So it's like every time I work with Fico, it's like I don't do exercises. Very, very physical. You have to be very strong. So I like really this connection that I have with them, and I see us like a team, no? Like a studio production team, and I have a lot of conversations and studio time with them.
Yes, sounds great. Well, thank you so much. I think we have spent like 1 hour talking about your work. I know there are many other series and approaches and things that you have created, but I think we have covered a great amount of them, and I'm happy that you have do such a recount from the very beginning of how your ideas come to your mind. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
If someone has a question, you can write it on the chat.
So Quisqueya, I have a question. First of all, I'm so impressed by everything you realized during your residency. In 2 months, you produced incredible works, and I'm so happy to have been able to, see them and understand, just your dedication as an artist is really remarkable. So I just have a very, kind of question. As your residency comes to an end, what is your next project? Did you start things in the studio that I know the ripped paintings are an ongoing series, but there were a few works in the studio, such as the one that had a more functional kind of purpose, holding the plant. Are you, did this experience in New York in the studio give you ideas for, a new series, let's say?
Well, the approach that the city of New York is always, I was listening to these audios, and a lot of artists, they start their practice in the 60s. They're taking objects from the streets of New York. So there's 2 couple of objects in the studio that I found in the streets of New York, and I put it on the work, like the one that I mentioned, Natalie, that is this elliptic wire that you can change, you can see both sizes. So it's made to dry the clothes flat. And I added some canvas and I painted, and I think the idea of that process of going to the streets and take an object and put it in your work is very connected to the history of the artist in relation to the city. So that particular moment in the studio is more like a sketch of a series I wanted to start during this project we did from Sindicato, which is a platform that I co-direct. It's an artist-run platform that I co-direct from Santo Domingo. And we did this exhibition about tools. And the more that we worked on the idea of tools, everything was a tool. Everything is a tool. Like a writing is a tool, an essay is a tool, but a brush is a tool. So everything during the period that we were working on curating the exhibition and thinking about artists who wanted to participate or be able to during the pandemic, I wanted to do these paintings like utilitarian paintings, that the painting, the many lives of a painting could be also a surface, a pictorial surface that you can use in your everyday life if you have that piece in your house, like a flower can that you can put flowers daily, but you have a color to interact with on the back of the painting, or also a planter. So that what you mentioned is a sketch of what could be this series that I don't know where to start or when to start, because I'm going back to the art, and then I have to work for a piece that I will have in Art Basel that is going to be presential this year. So I think it's something I will develop for next year. But the fact that I could sketch here during the residency was very exciting, actually, because I could see everything. Which objects and which ideas I will be developing for the series.
Great. Well, we can't wait to see them. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we can wait to see that. So if there's any other question from the audience, feel free to ask. No? Okay, so thank you so much, Quisqueya. I really have enjoyed this conversation. And thank you to RU for giving us this opportunity of being talking here and going through important ideas about Quisqueya's work.
Thank you, Meyken. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Lulu, and Residency Unlimited, and everyone involved in this magnificent period of 2 months in New York. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And enjoy the sunny day.